What I'm looking for in a bank is one that's looking out for me, like NBT. I want a relationship and a team that supports me in my dreams. And when life gets challenging, I need a bank that's focused on what matters. Not to mention one that's been top rated by Forbes in trust, customer service, financial advice, and more. That's why when it comes to meeting my banking needs, it's always NBT. Learn more at nbtbank.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Welcome, and thanks for tuning in to 2020 Media's On the Scene podcast, brought to you and made possible by NBT Bank, our sponsor. We reach over 25,000 readers through the Southern New England newspaper, Jewish Ledger, weha.com, West Hartford Magazine, live 24/7, 365. We try to bring on interesting speakers for all of you to listen to, whatever you're doing. If you're driving in your car or if you're working out, hopefully you enjoy all of our shows. Please make sure, to the best of your ability, that you support and sponsor our sponsor, who makes all of this possible, NBT Bank, who just opened up, about 3 weeks or so ago, a brand new branch, their first branch in West Hartford Center on Main Street. So if you have a chance, pop in and say hi to Andreas, the president, and the crowd for making all of this possible. In the meantime, I'm going to stop talking. My name's Tom Hickey from 2020 Media, and I'm going to introduce you to Bob Carr, my business partner in crime.
Thanks, Tom. So the correct one thing Tom said is 250,000 readers, not 25,000.
Oh, thank you.
Monthly readers. So that's what we have. Tom, along with myself, Kosim McCarty, and Ronnie Newton, is an owner and founder of weha.com. Tom is also the owner of 2020 Media, which publishes West Hartford Magazine, the Connecticut Jewish Ledger, and he brings to West Hartford the best of West Hartford, which is the 10th anniversary coming up this year, as well as numerous special events throughout the year. Our podcast is assembled by the Modern Observer Group in Middletown, Connecticut. Today, I'd like to welcome our guest, Karla Dalley, who is a garden columnist for West Hartford Magazine, and she appears in weha.com as well. Welcome, Karla. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem.
Hey, Carly, did Bob say your last name wrong, or have I been saying Daly incorrectly for years?
It's actually Dalley. Yes, it's English, not Irish.
Bob, I'm very impressed. Look at that. And I'm sorry, Carla, for saying Daly for the last.
It's quite all right. It's you and probably 3/4 of the population. I was so impressed when I actually traveled to England and they were saying Dalley, and I'm going, wow, okay. For the first time, people are saying my name correctly.
Bob, how did you know showing us up here?
The way it looked to me, it looked like Dalley. So I'm sorry. So this is kind of how I read it when I saw it. I read a little bit of your bio. I read a couple of your columns. I wanted to bring up a couple fun things about you. You were a lawyer, which you're the second person who was a lawyer who's no longer a lawyer on this podcast. I think it's very interesting.
You would think that there's a theme there, but there really isn't. It just ends up that way.
Absolutely. And I like the way you call yourself the lazy gardener. And I would like to, I'd love this story. So my wife and I are also lazy gardeners. We got lucky. The house we bought here in Rhode Island has the gardens are beautiful when we showed up, and they're very natural. But that was the Earth Mother who lived here before us, and not us. We just try to make sure we don't destroy them. So, what suggestions do you have on keeping a natural garden? And how do you find out what are native and non-native plants, et cetera? So.
Well, thankfully, native plants are becoming more and more popular all the time. There's all kinds of resources out there online. A very good resource for the best native plants is the Mount Cuba Center, which is, I believe, mountcuba.org. It's a public garden in Delaware, and they are actually trialing native plants so that they can help people find the absolute best native plants to grow. And because, everything is not created equal. Now, of course, we don't live in Delaware, but we're not that far removed. And zones are getting warmer all the time. We're still not quite Delaware, but they just changed the USDA hardiness maps. And we have actually increased half a zone. We were here in Connecticut and Hartford County, we were zone 6A. We're now zone 6B, which means we've increased 5 degrees. We were supposedly getting as cold as -10. Now we're supposedly only getting as cold as -5. So that's a significant change. We've just had one of the warmest winters on record, where we just had the wettest winter on record. So these things are going to impact our gardens going forward. And native plants are always some of the best plants to withstand whatever kind of changes weather is going to throw at us, because we don't know. We can't sit here today in early March and say, oh, well, yeah, summer is going to be hot and wet or hot and dry, or we just don't know. If we could, we wouldn't need all the weather people we have on TV. So they'd be pretty sorry to hear me say that.
Yeah.
But there are certain things we can do. So we can look to our native plants. We can look to things like compost. Mulch is not always necessarily the best thing. I don't mulch at all because I'm on very heavy wet clay, and all it does if I mulch is invite disease. So, but native plants will always grow for me. So that's always a good
And Bob and Carl, if you don't mind me just asking, if someone doesn't know what we mean by native plant, what do we mean by that?
Oh, you have just opened a can of worms there, Tom, because it's sort of like asking, what is an organic treatment or something. These are really squirrely terms. A native plant to someone might be something that was here in Connecticut. It could also be something native to the Northeast. It might be something native to America. Everyone sort of has a different definition of native plant, but it is not. And there are these things called nativars, which are plants that are native cultivars that a plant trade group or a plant breeding group has bred. So we might take an inkberry holly, which is a native holly that grows here in North America. And then they bred it for a particular, they've made it smaller, they've made it shorter, they've made it more compact, they've made it prettier. That's a nativar.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So,
well, Bob, you might have it one step further because you're on the shoreline. So it might even be something native to the shoreline.
Right. Yeah. So we have sandier soil.
Sandier soil, yes. And so those are going to be much different, quote, native plants than we would have inland here in Hartford County. Yeah. So for you, a native plant is probably going to be bayberry, definitely.
Yep, absolutely.
And goldenrods and things like that. And so, you want to, and, for me, I've always considered native plants to be coneflowers and black-eyed Susans, Rudbeckias, and Echinaceas. But a lot of people will say, I'm sorry, no, those are prairie plants. We don't have prairie here in Connecticut. We can't consider those native plants. So these are the kind of distinctions that some people make within the native plant communities, and others say, nah, what the heck? They're native. I'm growing them. So,
and Bob, did you know about these plants? Like, did you know? Did you know anything? I know nothing about plants, so I can say.
So one of the things that I will bring up, I had is it Japanese barberry? Is that the term?
Oh gosh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that was when I lived in Connecticut. I planted those quite a few decades ago, and then found out later on that they were invasives. So then and I actually have some here, kind of on a scrubby area, which I'm having taken out. Also, like bamboo is another one that you see out there, which is non-native, but is also very invasive, right? So those are things that do damage to the environment and prevent other things from like growing or providing habitat.
Interesting.
One of the things, as you start to see our woods starting to green up right now, you'll see this sort of low understory thing turning green. That's Japanese barberry. When we think of barberry, we think of it as being red. But what happens is in the understory, in the woods where the birds have dropped the seeds, it's green. And that's how the barberry has, quote, escaped cultivation and gotten into the woods and now is spreading all through our woods. in Massachusetts, a different problem is miscanthus grass, which is sort of that maybe 5-6 foot grass that we've all kind of planted in the 90s as, ornamental grasses were a thing and were the rage. Well, in Massachusetts, it's escaped. It's all over the Cape. And so that's one of their real problematic invasive plants. Miscanthus, again, is not a native plant to anywhere but perhaps Japan. But it hasn't proven to be a terrible problem here for us in Hartford County because it's not running rampant, through our woods or anything, the way barberry is running rampant. But as you are driving around and, just drive up and down 84 or 91 or something and take a glance, don't put your eyes from the road too often, but take a glance off into the woods, you'll start to see this greening understory plant. What that is that's barberry. That has been, they eat the seeds, the birds, and they eat the seeds and they drop them as they're sitting on the branches up above in the trees. That's all the barberry from everybody, all of us who had that. And it's also euonymus. And what we found with euonymus, it's burning bush there, the favorite burning bush that we all loved and planted again in the 90s because it had such beautiful fall color. Drop the seeds, again, in the woods, it's not a burning bush because it's understory. It looks just green. And what that has done, it's causing a terrible habitat for the ticks. So you walk in the woods, you get ticks on you, you get ticks on your dog. And that, again, is greening up in the woods, and causing a problem. And so this is, you think, well, this stuff isn't getting out of control in my property. No, but it's running amok in our little woodlands and our reservoirs and things like that. That's what's happening. It's the birds. The birds are our problem.
That's it. Exactly.
How did you get involved? So how did you become so involved in gardening?
I tell them when I go out and lecture to garden clubs and things, and I give them a little cheat sheet to introduce me, and I say that I have been involved in gardening since even before my younger sister was born, when I was 3. I remember vividly running ahead of everybody had a reel mower. There was none of this power mower stuff. And I would run ahead of my dad's reel mower. And we had little Johnny jump ups growing in the lawn. Those are those tiny little violets, the tricolor violets. And I would be saving them from the mower. And that was my first incidence of gardening. And even to this day, before we do our first mowing here at the property I live at now, we have little grape hyacinths growing in the lawn. And that's an interesting story how they got there, but I'll finish my first story. So I tell them, and I'm still running ahead of the mower to this day, saving the grape hyacinths. So there's this continual theme of me saving flowers from the mowers. But that's how I got involved. My dad was a gardener. And we had roses all around sort of the perimeter of our property, and I would just kind of toddle around after him and watch what he was doing. And I've just always been interested.
And I have to say, Karla, just my own personal experience, and I'm not just saying this, I love reading your column because I kill everything. I have no green thumb. But I just love reading, especially when it's seasonal, what you should be doing or what works, what doesn't work. And it helps me even think of what kinds of gifts I would give people, in the hope if I wanted to give them a plant, and that type of thing, or seeds, I think the last column that you were writing about, you were saying, oh, gee, it's time for everyone to start seeding. I'm thinking, oh, really? It's like, yeah, I guess it is. If you're not into it, you just don't think of it. So thank you for educating all of us. And if you have not enjoyed or read one of Karla's columns, as Bob had said earlier, you can pretty much see it anywhere. You can see it in West Hartford Magazine. You can see it on weha.com. You can see it through Jewish Ledger. They're all sort of interconnected. But, Google her, and or search West Hartford Magazine so that you can see some of the garden columns.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
Just had to get that plug in.
I try to keep them not only upbeat, because I think I might have said it in one of my most recent columns, that gardeners are, optimists. We try to be optimists, and next year's garden is always going to be better than last year's garden. That's just how it's going to be. And so I try to, keep things optimistic and hopeful, and, but at the same time, giving advice about what you shouldn't do. And, the best optimal way to do things so that things will work out in the best possible manner for people.
Well, it's like that, getting better each time. We have a joke within my office team for every cover of West Hartford magazine every time it comes out. And it takes, 6 or 7 different, renditions, of it before you love it. And I say, oh, it's our best cover yet. And everybody else says, you say that every time that we have an issue. It's just like, well, that means we're getting to, we keep striving towards, something even better. That's how he goes. And the April issue cover is drop dead gorgeous. So anyway.
Oh, good.
Good. So one of the things I read about, one of the things you mentioned was butterflies, and I was wondering how you have attracted so many to your property.
That was the simplest thing ever. And again, a very funny story. When I always talk about marrying my house and garden, because obviously I moved to my house when I got married, and the first thing I noticed was there was no butterflies, and I thought, this is really weird. So I started reading about what you needed, and it said that butterflies are extremely sensitive to pesticides. And I said, okay, well, that's simple. We will have no pesticides here, which took a little doing. If you read my blog at all, I call my husband the spoiler for many reasons. And and he really got that name after he went after one of the azaleas with an electric hedge trimmer. But yeah. But occasionally I will catch him trying to sneak some kind of pesticide onto the property too. And I'm like, no. So we went cold turkey on the pesticides, or I still try to be cold turkey on the pesticides. And literally, within a year, we had 29 different kinds of butterflies and moths after going cold turkey on the pesticides. But mind you, we have a backyard pond, and he was putting pool chemicals in the backyard pond. Now, it was as clear as a pool. You could have read the date on a penny on the bottom, but that's really not what you want in terms of wildlife. So I said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to, make it clear with plants and with fish. Now, you can't always read a date on a penny on the bottom, but we have frogs, we have fish. Occasionally we'll have a turtle get in there. So we have so much more wildlife that it's really beautiful. And, I know that we are the only totally organic property in the neighborhood, because I'll walk the dog in the spring and, the yellow lawn signs are popping up faster than the dandelions in terms of who's treating the lawn. And I have to walk the dog down the middle of the street sometimes. It's so frightening. It's really scary. Sometimes I just walk her around the backyard.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing. Are there certain, this might seem like a really dumb question, but you just made me think of it. Are there certain, Bob, you made me think of it when you talked about butterflies. Are there certain plants for your garden that attract birds?
There are plants that will attract birds, and most of those are plants that will have berries. And of course, even, holly will have berries.
Okay.
And there are shrubby dogwoods that will attract. You don't have to have the big dogwood trees. There are certain, 4 to 6 foot dogwoods, and several of them have beautiful stems for the winter, and they will attract birds. And because, of course, now they're recommending that you only feed the birds from December 1st to March 1st. I just pulled in my feeders. I'm in Farmington. I have bears, So, I don't want to be putting out anything that's going to be attracting bears and not birds. Right. So, no. And we have bears. Believe me, we have bears. But even
I'm sure your dog appreciates that too. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. But even something like a juniper, which has those beautiful gray berries that they make gin with. I have seen robins all over my junipers eating the berries. And, that's something that's very easily obtainable. And, you can find that at any garden center. We have several crab apples, and whenever I say crab apple, I remember this so distinctly when I was working in retail gardening. People would go, no, crab apples, they make such a terrible mess. Well, they don't make a mess anymore. They are bred so that the fruit stays on the tree. They don't fall. The fruit hangs on the tree, and it's beautiful. It looks like tiny little, mine are small. They're probably smaller than a dime, and they hang on that tree, and it looks like, Christmas candy just dangling on the tree until the robins come and eat it, or sometimes cedar waxwings. It's just gorgeous. I mean, so they don't fall and make a mess anymore.
Interesting.
And they're a beautiful flowering tree in the spring. The buds start out pink and turn to white. It's just gorgeous.
Beautiful.
That's good to know, because we're looking at places. So back to what you were saying earlier about organic, et cetera. Like we lived on a hillside in Litchfield County, and so I never really put any pesticides down. And we had a lot of bees. We had a lot of native native bees, and some honeybees, etc. And the only time I do use a pesticide is I live in a wooden house, and the
carpenter bee.
they love this house. They didn't love it. That's the only time. That's the only time. And I feel bad about. I feel bad about it. But there's these beautiful holes in my porch, my deck, and my house, and those are the one pesticide I use. I get rid of those guys. You have any suggestions for getting rid of carpenter bees?
Those are tough, and those are really tough. There was all manner of suggestions online, everything from hanging flashing metal things to actually putting up metal where the bees are. But of course, if they've made their nests in there, you don't want to cover over their nests, because that would just be counterproductive. All they're doing, carpenter bees are solitary nesting bees like the rest of our native bees. They're a native bee. And most of our native bees drill into the ground. They happen to drill into wood, which is unfortunate for the homeowner. So if they are starting to drill, but as far as you can determine, haven't laid their egg yet into your home, you can cover it with any number of, even put up a temporary piece of metal flashing over there so that they're not drilling right there, and divert them to your neighbor in that manner. Optimally. Yeah.
The next wooden house in the neighborhood, Bob. There you go.
The next wooden house, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Everybody else seems to have shingles or
yeah. And of course, because they are, once they find a place, they'll keep coming back. If they haven't come yet, maybe put up that piece of metal right now, so that when they come back for the spring, they'll be like, uh-oh, we're not going to be able to do this here, and then they'll try to find someplace else.
All right, good to know. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Great. All right. I think for this conversation, unless Bob, you're thinking of anything else, you look like maybe. Sorry, everybody. I can see Bob's face. He looks like he has.
I mean, I'm always. Again, we have always tried not to use any sort of pesticides. I use vinegar and salt, as weed kill. That usually tends to be on our gravel driveway, etc. If it's growing on the lawn, like you were saying earlier, I mow around anything that has a flower on it until it basically dies off, like hyacinths, grape hyacinths, and the little violets. So there's patches, and my wife gets mad at me for that, because I leave them. And they're growing in patches around the place. And then we do have a lot of milkweed here. I haven't been lucky enough to get a lot of monarch butterflies, but we do have a lot of milkweed. So I try to make sure we don't cut that down. But yeah, so no, that all that information you have was really, really good. I appreciate that. Anything you want to tell us that we haven't asked, something important that we didn't ask about?
Well, I'm really encouraged about you asking about all the native plants and things, and certainly about all of the sustainability and no pesticide use and things. I think those are really important trends, and more people are sort of jumping on those trends, or following those trends for sure. One of the other trends that I think we see more people, even here in West Hartford, following the no mow May, which is not mowing the lawns until a lot of the pollinators have had a chance to come out and use, as you say, some of those flowers that are in the lawn, and get some of those early pollinators, get some of that nectar, and from the we're calling them flowers. A lot of people might be calling them weeds in the lawn, but whatever term we want to use them. It's interesting when I talk about sustainability. I talk about way back in 1991, Yale came up with a term for the sort of lawn that you're describing and the sort of lawn that I have had, and they called it a freedom lawn. And every time I talk about this, I say this is not a political term, because the way our environment is now, it almost sounds like it's a political thing. But what it is it taught the way why they called it a freedom lawn is because the lawn was free of pesticides or herbicides or any kind of irrigation. And so that way, whatever the homeowner basically just had to mow whenever the lawn required it. And by not irrigating, the lawn requires it a whole heck of a lot less in, June and certainly July and August, because if you're not irrigating the lawn naturally slows down in its growth cycle. It doesn't, certainly with the amount of rain we've been getting, it doesn't ever really go brown, but it doesn't, I have a neighbor, he irrigates the lawn 3 times a day. It's insanity. And he does the 4-step fertilizer thing and everything, and yet he has more grubs than anybody I've ever seen. By late August, patches of his lawn are completely bare. I just cannot figure this out. So I would only suggest that maybe he really needs to change what he's doing. But regardless of all that, we have never obviously done any of that. And of course, our birds, when you're not putting out feeders, what are the birds eating but grubs or caterpillars? So they're eating an awful lot of our caterpillars, and a lot of those caterpillars are grubs. So, the birds really do a lot of our work for us if you just let them be birds and do their thing.
Absolutely.
So it's really nice.
I think that's a complete as much as you're going to get here today. I truly appreciate you being on. I think Tom obviously does, and love what you've written. And thank you for speaking to us.
And
you're quite welcome. Thank you.
And I think if we leave with any thought, which was not our intent, and as you said, Karla, it is not political. But let's just think about freedom. I think that's just a wonderful note to leave on when we're thinking about our lawns and gardens and everything that we need to do to make them more natural. And so
sounds great.
Very good. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Again, this has been On the Scene podcast brought to you by NBT Bank. And today we were kind enough, and thank you, Karla, for spending time with us and talking about our gardens. And Bob for having such great questions. And I've learned so much about you. I had no idea that you knew so much about plants. Now I don't need to bother Karla. I could just ask you. We'll go from there. But tune in next time when we'll have more of our columnists featured throughout the year. Again, this is Tom Hickey from 2020 Media. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Tom.
What I'm looking for in a bank is one that's looking out for me, like NBT. I want a relationship and a team that supports me in my dreams. And when life gets challenging, I need a bank that's focused on what matters. Not to mention one that's been top rated by Forbes in trust, customer service, financial advice, and more. That's why when it comes to meeting my banking needs, it's always NBT. Learn more at nbtbank.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.